Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Okay, well, a little bit of a longer answer on this one because I need to explain when I was about 7 or 8, I went to Cub Scouts. And it sort of changed things for me because the leaders were so good. They took us out on these trips, walks, camping, and I realised it was something I enjoyed. I enjoyed being outdoors. I was brought up in what would be described as inner city Leeds. There was parks nearby, but going on those scout camps, going on these walks, really sort of opened my eyes. And so when I went to high school, they did one of these careers type questionnaires, not computerized at that time. It was ticking boxes on a long pamphlet. And funnily enough, at the end of it, it said that I should become a lumberjack, which where I was living, there wasn't really a lot of call for lumberjacks. So I wasn't able to take that up. And sometimes now I think back and I think I possibly would have liked to have been a lumberjack living, in a woodland area, but that never happened. And so actually what I did was I applied for some apprenticeships at 16. I did have a bit of an inkling to want to stay on at school, but my parents really wanted me to find a job. To be fair, we weren't really a family that had a lot of people staying on at school, so that would have been quite different. And so I was quite interested in computers, and I looked through the yellow pages and I wrote to every computer company in Leeds in the yellow pages, and I had quite a few interviews actually, and also went for some other interviews. And so I guess what I wanted to be when I left school was I wanted to work in computers. And I was quite fortunate. And also I really tried hard as well to get a job at Systime Computers, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but at one time it was the second largest computer company in the country, based in Leeds, at what we called the Glass Palace, which is next to the White Rose Centre and is the Capita building now. When I applied for the apprenticeships, they were actually at a building called Concourse House, which is on Dewsbury Road at Beeston. And they'd grown really quickly in a matter of 3 or 4 years. They'd grown so significantly that they got this wonderful building with some grants and help from European Union, I think it was, worth 8 million or something like that, and lots of scope to grow. So that's I guess what I wanted to be, and that's what I was. But as I can explain, I did then go on and do a lot of other things.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 5, and to my guest, Bryan Walters, aka Geog Juice. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 17th of January 2024. Hello! So, 2 quick things. My back is still knackered and I won't be able to go to 2 episodes a week on a regular basis yet, but I might be able to publish 2 episodes or even more in a week Occasionally, I want to get back to having an episode out every week on a regular day again. I'd ask you if you have a preference for the day and time, but you wouldn't tell me if you did. Bryan Walters works in an office in Leeds 4 days a week doing admin. On Wednesdays, he works on Geography Juice, his YouTube channel about Leeds history and geography. Bryan went to Christchurch Upper Armley Primary, Armley Middle School, and City of Leeds High School. He left school at 16 to be an apprentice at Systime Computers, the glass palace next to the White Rose, which is now Capita. Agreeing with his parents that he could stay on at school if he got 5 A to Cs. In the meantime, Bryan went for many interviews. This was 1982. He really wanted the Systime job, and he was pleased when he got it, in spite of big competition. He also got his 5 A's to C's. Having finished the apprenticeship in 1985, Bryan was employed by Systime as a systems engineer. In 1987, he became a field engineer and had a company car with fuel card, aged 21. In 1993, Bryan started studying a degree course in geography, his favourite subject, with the Open University in his spare time, whilst also continuing on as a field engineer. In 1998, he graduated with a 2-1. At the same time, his career in IT was developing fast. By 2001, he was General Manager of Services at Sphinx, CST, an offshoot of Systime, which was by then defunct. Unfortunately, in 2003, the division was moved to another business in the south. Bryan could have moved with it, but decided to take the plunge and do a PGCE at the University of Leeds to become a geography teacher. Bryan joined Kettlethorpe High School in 2004, one of his training placement schools. In 2006, Bryan became head of geography. In 2021, suffering a period of ill health, Bryan took the decision to leave teaching. However, he still loves the subject and continues to make videos and engage with it. He also loves his home city and loves exploring it and sharing his discoveries. Bryan says, "I guess my 4-day-a-week job funds my 1-day-a-week job. Although, to be honest, I spend much of my spare time on Geography Juice." All Bryan's social media channels are at GeogJuice, so that's Geog Juice. If you're interested in Leeds, then check out his YouTube work. It's really well made, informative and entertaining. And if you fancy spending some time on YouTube, then check out Working Hours channel as well at youtube.com/@workinghoursPodcast4618. where you can find audiogram versions of all the podcasts. And in the next episode, you'll also be able to see me and my guest, so watch out for that. Right, let's do this. Episode 115 of Working Hours with Bryan Walters. Okay, so we're going to kind of talk around your role, like your day job. The next question is, what do you do now? So, but you also do something else alongside your day job as well. So you've kind of got dual roles, at least 2 roles.
Yes.
So what is it that you are doing now then?
Okay. As you alluded to, I've got 2 roles. I'm working. I'm doing admin in an office in Leeds 4 days a week, and then 1 day per week. Although it's more than that, it's weekends and free time. I have a YouTube channel where I am creating GCSE geography videos and also Leeds local history videos. I think it's nearly 100 videos on there now, and that's my passion, I guess. I was a geography teacher for just about 20 years. So if I just give a little bit of background, when I started working at Systime, I was an apprentice, and they took me on at the end of that after 3 years, and I was a systems engineer. I was then a field engineer, driving around repairing computers, and that really, it sort of took off, and I moved into management at a company which was then called CST and eventually became Sphinx CST, which was a bit of an offshoot of Systime. Systime was a catalyst of an awful lot of companies in Leeds. Many of the older computer companies in Leeds were people who had worked at Systime or had worked with Systime. So there were quite a few of those. But as I said earlier, I did want to stay on at school as well. I don't have any regrets about that job. I really enjoyed it, and the people I worked with and all the memories are fantastic. But I did really think that I hadn't completed everything that I wanted to do academically. So whilst I was working there, I started to study geography at degree level with the Open University. And I graduated in 1998. I was doing quite well at work at that point. But within sort of 5 years of that, I was the general manager of services for Sphinx CST, but we were taken over by another member of the group, and I was given an offer to go and work near Chesterfield and carry on there. But I just didn't feel comfortable with it. It wasn't the same. It didn't feel the same. I didn't feel quite as welcome as well. And I'd been studying geography with an idea about maybe going into teaching. And so what I did was, with my wife's encouragement, I went to Leeds University, or University of Leeds as it prefers to be called, and I did a PGCE in 2003 and became a geography teacher. And that went on. I was a geography teacher until 2021.
Yeah. You doing GCSE level?
GCSE, yeah, age 11 to 16, which I absolutely loved. I loved teaching the young people. I liked interacting with the young people. I liked putting things across. I liked to create resources, little quizzes. I made almost all my own resources to be used in the lessons. I really enjoyed that because it meant I could put it across in a certain way and I could explain how I felt it would be best explained. And my channel is called Geography Juice, and that comes from a quiz that I used to run just before we would break up for half term or Easter or Christmas, which the school kids absolutely loved and I loved as well. And it wasn't just a quiz where you might possibly think that's just a way of a teacher having a bit of an easy afternoon or something. Actually, me and my colleagues put together a really good quiz with picture rounds and a little bit of Jeopardy, all these things. And so it actually meant that the kids really enjoyed it, and it meant they really enjoyed the subject as well. So now, having stopped becoming, leaving teaching in 2021, not because I didn't enjoy the job. I enjoyed the job. I really loved it. But some of the pressures started to have an impact upon me. And I had a little bit of ill health, and I had to have a little bit of a rethink. And so I left teaching, but I still like it and I still want to be part of it and engage with it. And so that's the time I started to make videos, GCSE geography videos, where I was trying to share my love of geography. But also, often when people study geography, they're using case studies from places that are much further away. So Bristol, for example, or London or Birmingham. And I thought what I could do is I could use Leeds and Yorkshire as the main examples. Because what I tried to do as a teacher was I tried to use local examples so that the children could understand or may have been there or could relate better to it. So I started to make videos using Leeds rather than these other cities, sharing the same principles but using the city that I love. So that's where the GCSE geography part came. But then as I was making those videos, I started to see other aspects of my city that I could share, and I was finding out things, and I am finding out things all the time. And so I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll try and make one or two videos which are about Leeds and a little bit of background, and maybe I can use some old photographs and see what they're like now. And I'd seen one or two channels that were doing not the same, but similar types of things. I thought, well, I'll give that a go. And actually, I equally enjoyed that and found that people like to see that as well. And it brought a lot of memories out. So that's why the channel that I've run is those two things. And my aims are to try to cover what's called the AQA geography curriculum eventually with GCSE geography videos that are useful, and they are useful, and schools use them, and students use them, but also continue to make the Leeds local history videos. And as I do those, I'm not thinking, oh, this is going to be a great video that loads of people are going to want to watch, and I'll get loads of views. I'm actually trying to cover areas sometimes that are not very well known at all, that people may not have heard of, or only a few people have heard of, or where communities have gone that used to be there. So, tourist housing predominantly, those tourist housed inner city areas that were taken and wiped out. I try to cover the human aspect of it as much as I cover the buildings and the industry and things like that.
We've kind of covered what you're doing now and how you got into it.
Yeah.
We'll go into questions, and then if I remember other questions, I'll maybe ask them a bit later on. So I'm going to jump straight in with COVID to start.
Okay.
So what I want you to think about here is going into the lockdown, whether you were working more, working less, or it didn't change for you. For some people, they didn't really even notice lockdown. It was just the same day. And then coming out of lockdown, is there anything that's kind of permanently changed for you and the way you work?
Well, so when lockdown happened, it was quite a shock. And I was working in a secondary school, which I only ever worked in one secondary school, and it was a fantastic school. Really enjoyed it. All the pupils were, well, just young people trying to get on with life, really. So, with all their ups and downs, but generally very, very nice, pleasant young people. And even when people weren't pleasant, there were often reasons behind that. And part of my job as a teacher was to try to encourage them to cope and to deal and to be nicer people. So when lockdown came along, it was I could not anticipate something like that would happen. That we watched TV, and Boris came on and said, "You just cannot go to work tomorrow." And working in a school at that time, there was no real way you could work because the children weren't in front of you. Everything was geared up for you working face to face with children. And so in the first few days, it was just a shock. But then slowly, school got in touch and we started to look after key worker children and to try to help key worker children at first. I'm not entirely sure the reasons why at first why that happened, but that's where we went.
Childcare. Because
Of
they didn't want to
course,
pay for
yeah,
childcare.
absolutely, yeah.
And then so they were like, okay, well, we'll open the schools for key workers kids.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
They need someone through the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So we would then go into school and we'd be grouped with children, but it didn't work quite the same as it had. The children weren't really as prepared for it either. So they were thinking, well, we're going to school. We're not really sure why we're going to school. Why is everyone not going to school? So we had to sort of adapt what we were doing and what we were trying to do, and that went on for a while. But slowly we started to bring in IT, and so we had laptops as teachers, and we started to share links, and slowly we started to prepare work online more or less. Not so much have lessons online at first, but to prepare work online. We would prepare resources that could be clicked and downloaded and started to offer a curriculum, but still it wasn't quite enough, and we were still coping. Ultimately, we did start to do face-to-face lessons, but there were pressures because you would be with the key worker children during the day, and then on an evening you would then be increasingly working with the other children who were working online. I always had the opinion that if someone prepares, a response piece of work and sends it in, you should read it and you should look through it and you should comment upon it and give advice. But it meant that the working day became much longer because you were effectively working twice at that time, and it did start to place some demands. And the children weren't entirely happy about, the key worker children weren't entirely happy about the fact that they were at school and also they might have to do some of the online stuff as well. So they were finding they were having a double, double hit sort of thing. So it wasn't easy. That's for certain. It wasn't easy. As a result of that, it has become the norm now that if children are off school, then there'll be work there for them, and it became an expectation as well. I think with a lot of parents that if their child isn't there, then school should provide something. So I think that's placed more demands on teachers, and the advent of that contact has meant now that parents feel a bit more empowered about making demands, and teachers feel that their day is impacted a lot more with responding to parents and what the parents would like to know, or what their point of view is. So I think it, in many ways, it made teaching more difficult.
So coming out of the other side, I mean, obviously you had a sort of change of role. When did you say you started this
Yeah.
new one?
So what happened was, as we went back into the following year, I started to have a bit of a little bit of a period of ill health, and I realised that I'd worked very hard often for a long time, and put pressure on myself a lot for a long time, and I mean really for years and years. And I realised that I was trying to work in a way that wasn't really sustainable, but I'd done it for quite a long time. But now I was faced with a choice really, where I could try to step back and not be the same teacher, and try to ignore some things and let some things slip. And that wasn't really me. I didn't want to do that. Or I had to sort of make a decision about what I would do. So I decided that the best thing to do was to step away, which was very hard. And to be honest, it took a long time of thinking it through.
It does.
Literally months of thinking it through.
Yeah.
Where I was thinking, well, what if? And then, no, that's not going to work. Or what if? And that's not going to work.
Because it's that kind of role where with the kids as well, you are thinking about the kids, you're thinking about
Absolutely.
and what you're going to be leaving them to be exposed to and who they're going to get next.
Absolutely. I've got two children of my own who I love to bits. And I always treated the children that I taught in the same way I would treat my own children, so not letting them down if I could help it. If I said I was going to do something, make sure I did it. And all those pressures, I think, at the end, the hardest bit was to turn my back, as I sort of felt, on the children I've been teaching. But the thing about being a secondary school teacher is that you have the year 11s who are going through, and they're going to leave, and that's fine. That's what happens. But then coming through behind them, you've got year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, and you develop relationships with them as well. And so you feel you sort of you're helping them grow, and you have that feeling by leaving that you haven't quite seen that bit through. But that was always going to be the case. Whenever I stopped, that was always going to be the case.
Yeah.
But you're quite right. That was the hardest part, was to, and that was the bit I thought about. It wasn't really about myself. The hardest bit was to think, right. And I have to be honest, I really did love the job. And
I mean, that's why we've got any teachers left. It's like the ones that are hanging on there for the kids, a large part of it.
Yeah, I didn't try to be like a cool teacher or anything like that, but I was well liked. I'm sure I was well liked because I treated the children fairly. But sometimes when you're in the classroom and you have 30 children, and you can have a little bit of a laugh and have humour, and sometimes you're all just laughing along together, and it's absolutely marvellous. And it's a feeling that you can't really explain until you're actually doing it. It's the best feeling, really. And when you have a class where you can see they totally understand what you're trying to get across, and they're all working silently on it, or they're all engaged in it, those feelings are so good. So that's the bit that I miss, I think.
It's kind of a naturally rewarding job, and it's one of those where you can actually see the results of your work in front of you.
Absolutely, yeah. That's it.
Like admins, just you do stuff and then you go in the next day and you do similar or the same stuff.
That's it. Yeah, you can. Some of the things that are really good, it's a job that you can start again the next day. So whatever happens in school, and you're trying your best to do your best, if something goes wrong or it doesn't quite work out, or even if it's down to just the lesson didn't work, you can always go again the next day and try again. And some of the things you can do, young people put their trust in you. You can help them cope with certain things, um, like a child maybe gets into trouble. I've done this quite a bit. They get into trouble, they fall out with the teacher, and you coach them through and say, look, we are going to have to go back and see that teacher and talk through what happened, because if you don't, it's going to be more difficult when you do see them. And so I found myself quite often saying, oh, this pupil X would like to say something, and then you're sort of helping them deal with the situation, learn how to cope with the situation, and maybe next time they might deal with it differently. And that's not to say that it's always the children. Sometimes it's the teachers. People are people. So everyone has a good day and a bad day. So that can happen.
So since we Brexited in
Yeah.
2021, has that changed your work at all? Has there been an impact, either good, bad, or have you not really noticed a change?
No, I haven't noticed it as a change in work. I've noticed it because as a geography teacher, I like to travel. So I do like to go on holiday, visit places. So it's had an impact on that. Also, products on the shelves, there's been a change there. Some of it good and some of it bad, because I think there was quite a bit of waste, and a lot of products on the shelf that weren't necessarily seasonal and things like that. So I think there's been a shift there, which isn't such a bad thing. But it's been good and bad. But in terms of work, I can't say that it's directly affected my work. It's more affected my life out of work.
Yeah. It very much seems to be either it has impacted your work, and it seems to have been bad from the people that I've spoken to, or they've not really noticed a difference. So I will do climate change next. So Leeds is a city that has declared a climate emergency. In your work, is there anything that you can do to raise awareness about adaptation, mitigation, and reducing the impact?
Well, in my admin job, I work in an area which has it's a little bit prone to flooding. So it can be that sometimes they have to put these barriers up that protect it from the river. So that's in my admin job. But making the geography videos and also making the Leeds local history videos, Leeds has the River Aire running through. There's other becks and also that run through. And geography is about the world, and of course climate change is affecting the world. So when I'm making the videos, when I make the GCSE geography videos, I think about the AQA geography spec, which does take account of climate change and what's happening, but also we can think about that on the local level. So I made a series of videos about the River Calder. The secondary school that I worked in was in Wakefield, and a lot, as I said earlier, a lot of the case study videos are in other places, and I wanted to make videos that were more local. So I followed the River Calder from its start right the way down to the River Humber, and then I was able to include the Hebden Bridge floods, and then also the mitigation that's going on there, and the planting of woodland and the defences that they're putting in place. So in terms of what can I do about climate change, I suppose what I'm doing with the videos is drawing attention to it to help young people when they use them for study. But to be honest, quite a few people who watch the videos, they watch both the geography and the local history. So there's a little bit of a crossover. So I get quite a few people commenting that they've watched GCSE geography ones, and that's entirely what I would like. I would like people to watch both of them, but it sort of raises awareness of what's going on, I suppose.
Like I wanted to I wanted to bring this up anyway, so this seems like an appropriate place to do it. But there's sort of, you've got that connection there between geography and history, and they're kind of, I mean, I don't know if it's still the same, but when I was doing my GCSEs, they're very much sort of placed together in the
Yes.
GCSEs categories of like the two humanities that you can kind of pick. Like basically, I want to pick your brains on what you think the links are and why you've done the two. So you started with geography,
Yeah.
then you've ended up with all the history videos as well. So like just how those interconnect for you.
Well, the most obvious way that they interconnect is if you were to go and stand on Briggate in Leeds. And if you stood on Briggate in Leeds, the geography would be where you are, what the location is, and the landscape around you, the topography, water supply. But Briggate is also a place which has been there for, well, hundreds of years. And the buildings surrounding you generally are Victorian, maybe even in some cases, maybe even slightly older. But even the buildings that are sort of from the 1930s, they're buildings that people put there in the past, and they're linked to the past. And when you're standing there on Briggate, that's your turn, if you like, to be standing there. And in 100 years' time, someone else will be standing there. And what I find interesting is that you can look at doors, windows, buildings, and you can see where someone else used to stand, where a different shop was, same building, but a different shop, a different use. And so the two are linked together. Briggate is where it is because it was an ideal location. Leeds started out around Kergate. It wanted to expand. Briggate was its expansion. The bottom of Briggate is where Leeds Bridge is. It's an important element of the history of the city because all of the trade passed over Leeds Bridge. There was a market there. People visited. It was a good location. So Leeds is in a good location. That's why it was able to grow. But people were making decisions about where it was and how it would grow. And what's really good is when you go down and you see Leeds Bridge and you think about its location, that's its geography. But when you think about the bridge itself and who built it and how they built it and why they built it, that's the history. So when you're in school, sometimes you had to choose between geography and history. Children had to make a choice, but we always wanted them to be able to do both because they're both really valid, but for different reasons.
And they're intimately tied together. I mean, not that everything is determined by geography, but to a large extent, geography's destiny kind of thing. So yeah, they are kind of connected because
they are definitely. People go to a place and they're looking to do something, and they're looking for the best place to do it. So that's the geography. Then the decisions that they take at that time, they're there later, and that's the history of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's also like what's possible for you to do in this environment, like in this geographical region. Like,
yes.
Okay, so we've got mountains here that's going to prevent us from doing all of these options, and it's really floody here, so maybe we don't want to build too much here, and all of those kind of considerations.
Yes.
So let's do social media because we've kind of touched on it already and sort of gone around it. So the question here is, how much time do you have to spend on social media for work? And do you feel that the amount of time that you put into social media gives you back the return, the value that you want?
Well, in my job, I don't use social media. In my admin job, I don't use social media. But in my hobby, the Geography Juice channel, I use social media to share information, to let people know about what I'm working on, to give a little bit of background to what I'm doing. And the YouTube channel, I would still think that is social media. That's where I share the videos that people can see. So social media, I think, is really important in my hobby because I can see what other people are doing, other people's ideas. I can think about how I want to present my videos, what I'm doing.
Mm.
So I spend quite a lot of time on it,
Mm.
I would say. Do I get back what I put in? It's a labour of love, is this? It's not really necessarily about getting back, to be honest.
Mm.
It's something I really like, and I can go where I want in a way, on a whim. So I can think, right, I'll be doing a video and I'll pass somewhere. The other day I was in Leeds and I was taking a little bit of video because I was doing this video about a post-industrial UK, which is a GCSE geography video. But I noticed as I was taking this little bit of video about on Commercial Street, I was taking a little bit of video of the Leeds Building Society because I was trying to show the local financial services links.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that Bank Street is just there, just at the side of this little building society is Bank Street.
Mm.
Now, I know that if you go down onto Ball Lane, you can see Bank Street there as well.
Mm.
There's a little bit near to where C&A used to be, if you remember that far back.
Yeah.
So Bank Street's there, and then Bank Street's at the other side, but it's been interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And just that moment, I just think to myself, well, I wonder what's happened, how that's taken place.
Mm.
How did it get chopped up?
Mm-hmm.
And what was Bank Street like before?
Mm.
And that's the nice thing about what I do. I've got that freedom really to come across something and then think, oh yeah, I'd like to look into that further.
You've also
So
got an incentive to do it as well, because how many times do you just, as you're wandering around, during your day and you look at things and you're kind of like, oh, I wonder this and I wonder that and I wonder the other, and all of those ideas, they just drift away, Like
yeah,
sometimes you might spend some time mulling them over, but you're like, I can make something of that, and then
yeah,
I can find out and I can tell other people what it
that's
is.
it. And there might only be maybe 1 or 2,000 people actually click on it, but it's not really about how many people click on it.
Mm.
It's finding out something and then sharing it.
Mm.
So that's why I say it's not. I do get back because people make lovely comments and they're interested too. There's lots of people interested in these kind of things and want to know more, and I like to do it.
Mm.
But I guess that's what you get back is people liking it also and finding it something that they like to look into.
Mm. I mean, it must take it. So I want to spend a little bit of time on the videos.
Yeah.
So it must take you. I mean, what's your output? Are you trying to do one a week, or because
It's
the research must take some time and the
yeah,
writing.
it's roughly one a month.
Right.
Generally one a month. I think
Yeah.
last year I did 18 videos,
Mm.
but it's roughly one a month because I'm working as well, for a good proportion of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will start to research a video. I want to find out more about what I'm trying to get across. So if it's a GCSE geography one, I need to look at what is the information that the specification demands.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a local history one, it's more about finding out the background, looking at maybe old photographs, looking at old maps,
Mm-hmm.
trying to establish what's gone before,
Mm-hmm.
and also trying to be factually correct. So I do try to double check because a lot of the people who are watching the videos, they know what they're looking at. So I want to get it right, and very rarely, but it does happen sometimes afterwards. I put the video out and I think, oh no, I realise now I said that was in Sturt and it's actually Hunslet. So
Yeah.
someone's gonna correct me, and it does. It does happen.
But you are working on your own. It's not like you have a team of, there's no one
that's it.
proofing, there's no department that's making sure.
That's it. And so it takes about 3 to 4 weeks. I have to go and collect the video that I want to use, and I need the brighter days.
Mm.
It's much better if it's a blue sky because the light is better.
Mm.
The video camera works if it's a little bit gloomy, but I do need to be careful with that. So I need to get the right sort of video. I need to have it's a sort of a script. Mine are more documentary. They're not the ones where you see people doing the vlogs. Mine's more of a documentary style. So I have to research and make sure I know that I'm talking about the right things, and then I piece it all together. And it's really funny because by the time you get this, is probably the same with your podcast. By the time you get to the time when you upload it and and people can view it, you've almost come to the end of your relationship with it, because you spent time putting it all together and trying to get it right. And in a way, you feel, right, I can look at the next one just as people are looking at what you've created.
Yeah, I have this weird relationship with it where, so I'll spend time getting an episode ready and then I post it, and then it's like really anticlimactic because you want something to happen. I want something to happen. It's like, streamers or something, or someone to go, congratulations, we did it again, and there's nothing. You just kind of put it out there, and then it's like, oh, that's done.
Yeah.
That's all over.
Well, I have two audiences really, but they're interlinked. But the Leeds local history videos, they take off really quickly. People
There's a lot of
like
interest
them
now as well.
Yeah. So they take off, and could be thousands of views within a few days. But then it slows down.
Yeah.
Whereas the geography ones, they don't really take off. They sit there on 50 views for about 3 days or something.
I bet they get better at exams.
Then they slowly get picked up, and it's also the same with likes. The local history ones, people click like an awful lot. The geography ones don't seem to click like so much. It seems to, so it takes a lot longer for them. But ultimately, they both do really well in their own way. The geography ones, I guess, are more, as you say, aimed at a certain time. So when they're teaching a certain module or where the exams are approaching, where I think the local history ones are more of a recreational view, where people are interested in it and they're spending their spare time looking at and finding out more. So they're probably more inclined to click at first, whereas the geography ones, they're more inclined to click when they get to a certain point where they want to make use of it.
And I would guess that the history ones work more on this kind of subscription, and it's people who are subscribed to you and they get notifications to watch the new ones, and they watch the new ones straight away. Whereas the geography ones, people are more likely to search for a particular thing and then come across the video.
Yeah, you can tell. So when you have a YouTube channel, it tells you how many people have watched, and you can see things day by day, how many people are watching them. And some people have said to me, it looks like the local history ones are more popular, and I guess they are. But when it's the school holidays, it's amazing how fewer views there are. They're definitely used, over that period. But it just depends. They're in certain time sequences, whereas the local history, that's just when people have got some free time and maybe a weekend or something, they want to find out more.
So is the goal with the history videos, at least, is the goal with that just to keep making them for as long as you're interested, or have you got more ambitious projects in mind? Is it ultimately going to lead to a big 10-part documentary of the history of Leeds?
There's nothing planned along those lines. I have to tell you, it's just I'm interested in it, and it's something I enjoy doing. So I will just continue. To be honest, I do get regular viewers who get in touch and give me ideas. And some of the videos that I've made have been from people saying, "Oh, it'd be really good if you did a video here." And so I thought, yeah, that's good. So I've said thank you for the tip, and I've got a list of places and ones that I would like to do. I've got probably 9 or 10 this year that I think I would like to do. But that list changes depending on how I feel, and also when other people give ideas. But I'll keep on doing them. I want them to be better. I think they are better than when I first started, in the format, the sound. It's really strange speaking as well. When you first start doing it, you realize it's quite hard to listen to yourself, and some quite funny, but on YouTube there's subtitles that a lot of people use. They like to watch videos just just with the subtitles. So you have to really try to enunciate what you're saying and speak in a certain way to try to make the subtitles work.
Yeah.
But then people are not sure what my accent is, and I think I've probably got quite a strong Leeds accent. But I get people saying, "Where are you from?" You know, we don't say round here in Leeds. We say roundy, and it's quite it's quite a surprise when you start recording yourself to hear yourself and think how it comes across. So I think I'm improving in that respect. I'm improving in sort of the way that I edit videos and the clips that I take. So I'd like to keep improving them really, and hopefully reach a wider audience, I suppose.
I mean, I think they're well made. I mean, they're obviously well researched, and it's like they're nicely put together. They look smooth and professional. They don't look, they look well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So let's go on to the change question. So, and you can consider this for both roles again.
Yeah.
So if you could change any three things about your work, what might you change?
Okay. Well, these are changes that have happened. I thought about three things. Well, two of them are changes that have happened, and one is one that needs to happen. So the working from home, as a result, when you asked the question earlier about COVID, I didn't really express what a benefit working from home has become. And it's allowed people much wider career choices. They can work remotely from many more places. It can suit their working day much better. But, they can have family time. They're not having to travel as much. All of these things, I think, are positives. Before COVID, we were a little bit institutionalized really into our forms of working. And I think that working from home does work. The job that I've got, a couple of days a week I work from home, and a couple of days a week I work in the office. I actually feel more productive when I'm working from home. But when I go in the office, I like the people that I work with, and so I've got that chance to interact and chat, and I really like that too.
Yeah, and
but I
feel
think,
part of the workplace.
yeah, that's right. So I like that, but I do think working from home is a benefit that has come out of this. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Sometimes you're hearing that employers want to get more people back to work and all of that. But I don't know if that's sometimes because it's a good working reason, or if it's vanity of seeing people sat on chairs.
Well, and a lot of it is so that commercial landlords get paid.
That's right. Yeah. And you buy a coffee and all those things get the economy going. Yeah. So that's one which has already happened, which I think is good. And as I say, I think it's important that people can access careers now much further away than they were able to, which must be good for a lot of communities. I realise there's poverty around and not everyone can access a computer, but often if you get one of these jobs, they provide the computer. Something like 97% of houses have got internet now. And so that has to be a good thing. The second is flexi time, which doesn't work in schools.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. But where I work now, you can start a bit earlier, finish a little earlier. Some people prefer to start a bit later, finish a bit later. And I think that's pretty good as well. And that probably comes from the fact that the type of jobs that we all do have changed. We're not there's only a small proportion of people who are working manufacturing things, working in a factory and those type of work. A lot of the work that we do is service work. So I think flexi time is good. People can work and it can fit better to their home life, so you can get a bit of a better home life balance as well. So they're two things. The third, so when I said earlier on that I'd had a bit of a period of ill health, one of the driving forces behind that, in my opinion, was Ofsted. And this is a little bit controversial, or maybe for some people who are listening, but Ofsted for me should be a supportive mechanism where they come into school to check you're doing things right. But far too often, what's happened with Ofsted is schools are doing things just in case Ofsted wish to see it, or because they think Ofsted want to see it. So when I first started in teaching, I spent a lot of time making things which I thought the children would like and engage with. And it made the lessons more interesting, it made the subjects more interesting. But later, we found ourselves marking work really for the sake of marking work, and then getting children to mark their own work or respond to the marking. Then the teacher would mark it again. And I don't think it ostensibly changed how we taught. I don't think the outcomes were any different, but it meant I had less time to do the creative stuff and try to make it more interesting, and also to try to suit the different classes that I had. So I think if you took Ofsted away, it wouldn't make any difference, because I cannot remember meeting very many teachers who didn't just want to do a good job for children and help children. Very few, if ever, did I come across a teacher who didn't want to do their best job. But I think the Ofsted thing just it's grown and grown and grown, and it's spoiling education, sadly.
There's a weird two-sided thing in the media of like valorizing public sector workers, and you know, you sort of pedestal them, but at the same time rip them down. It's like we've got to come down on them all hard, and everyone needs to be watched and look at all these bad examples. But then at the same time, when appropriate, it's like, oh, they're the best people in the world. Kind of like, you know, everyone coming out on the doorstep and capping the NHS.
That's
and
right.
being encouraged to by Westminster, and then Westminster's like, no, we're not paying them anything. No.
I think being a teacher is a vocation. Most teachers go into teaching because they want to share what they know, and they want to help, like nursing, other professions like that. They're basically going into it for the right reasons, and they want to do the very best job. And you rarely come across anybody who doesn't want to do the very best job. Some things go wrong, and I can see why Ofsted might need to go and check on safeguarding and making sure that schools are running properly. I can see that. But also, I think they just need to give a little more freedom to the teachers to try to suit where the teachers are. And as I say, I think that was the bit that just tips me over the edge really with teaching. Was I loved all of the stuff that I was doing and the classes and helping young people, but I was spending so much time doing things out of school, which wasn't really productive time. But it was because we would be scrutinised on are all these books double marked, and doing things just in case Ofsted came in. It was literally that, when I could have been thinking of something really good to do in the lesson and making things that would make the lesson even better. But I was just running out of time trying to do both of those.
It's like I remember being in a role at a financial services company, and they wanted you to spend like 10 to 20 minutes a day filling in this KPI form to say what you spent your day doing, like how much of the day was spent doing what. I was like, but so you're trying to track what I'm doing in the day to measure productivity, but you're reducing my productivity by making me spend, 20 minutes, half an hour filling a pointless form.
Yeah.
It seems counterproductive.
Yes.
So in the case of the YouTube channel, then, is there anything that you would like to change for that? Maybe bigger crew, or
it's a little bit. People use that thing, my baby, so it's a little bit like my baby in that respect. It's something that I've got ownership of, and I want to spend my time on. So I'm not really looking to have a bigger crew.
You don't really feel constrained by anything at the moment. You're quite happy. I'm making videos. They're good. I'm happy with the videos.
Yeah.
I just want to make them better.
Yeah. One of the things about making videos and putting them on YouTube is if you do get better and you learn things, if ever you start making these videos, you learn things as you go along, which is quite right. And you look at some of these videos online and you see advice when you first start out, it says just get on with it and learn as you go along. And they say you will not know what your channel is going to be like until you do 100 videos. But when you get to, I'm on something like 98 videos now, you would like to go back and improve the ones. And that's the bit really, because you know that you would record it differently. I make all graphics and things like that, little graphs and resources and things on there to sort of point things out, or maps. And I'm really lucky because Leeds Library, the Leodis site, are really supportive, and they let me use their videos, obviously with the copyright and making clear that I'm using Leodis, attributed, but they're really good. But I think I could maybe have done a sort of a fade on a old photograph a little better, or I could have changed the ending of it, or maybe just adjusted it a little bit. So that's the only thing I would change, is if you could go back and edit, but you can't. You just got to take it off and do it again, and I can't really go back and do all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's giving me, it makes me think of another school sort of meme of like showing you working out. And I think in some ways that's good, that it's kind of, because you want to present, and that's an artistic endeavor. It's an educational endeavor, but it's a creative and artistic endeavor as well. And you want it to be, when you put the show on, you want the show to be rehearsed, to be perfect, to be as best as it can be. But you kind of have done that through those. It's just, you can do better now.
That's it. Each time I've thought about this, because it's something you do look back on. Each time I think to myself, well, just make the best video you can at that time, and then the next one, make the best one that you can, and just keep trying to improve.
So have you got any kind of short-term goals of like things you want to learn? Are you doing a bit more animation, or you want to get really good at, I don't know, color correction or whatever?
I would like to do a little more study on actual editing, and the editing software that I use. I've got it set up and it works, and I'm a bit fearful of starting to change anything, because I might not be able to get it to go back to how it was. But I'm sure that I could change the number of frames per minute or second. I'm sure I could do some things. So I would like to do a bit of study on that side of things and make some improvements there. But at the moment it works. So I'm a little bit reticent to start changing.
If it ain't broke, yeah.
That's it.
Okay, so I'll go on to my final question, which is the UBI question. So universal basic income. So everybody would be getting an amount of money on a regular basis. It doesn't stop you from working, but it just gives you some kind of floor and regular payment in there, so that people can plan a little bit. So if there was a universal basic income, how do you think that might affect your work? Would you still work? Would you still be doing what you do now? Would you do more, less of it? Like, how might things change for you?
Well, if there was a universal basic income, maybe I could spend more time making my videos and doing that. So that would be one thing. But I did take a little break from working, in the outside world for about 9 months, and I like the interaction with people. I wanted to go back to that, so that's why I took this job that I've got, and I enjoy that job. So I would probably still wish to carry on working. I've not entirely got a massive opinion on this. It's something I hadn't heard of until I started listening to our podcast and had the opportunity to come on. But I do have a strong opinion on providing things for people, like libraries, places where people can learn. I do think giving people the opportunity is really important. So I'm not entirely convinced about the universal basic income, but I am convinced that if you give people the opportunity to study to access books, to access the internet, to be able to help themselves, then I think that is a really good thing. And I am disappointed with how libraries are not used as much. And I think part of the problem is people have got out of the habit of going to the library. But sometimes the hours are changed and people don't feel as confident that they're going to be able to make use of it. So two things going hand in hand. A bit like the bus service, people can't rely on the bus service, so they don't use the bus service. And then the bus service is reduced because people are not using the bus service. So I think you've got to have a basic social infrastructure that gives people the chance to get on, and that should be a given. And then if a universal basic income acts in a similar sort of way so that people can do work that they would like to do, rather than be maybe forced into work just for particular income, then that could be a good thing as well. But it's not something I've got a strong opinion on right now, but maybe I will have after I've had a longer time to think about it.
Fair enough. I mean, what you were saying there, obviously, libraries have been around for a long time and so on, but a lot of the kind of public-minded sort of buildings and stuff, especially in Leeds, being mostly kind of a Victorian city in a lot of ways, right? But also the idea of public luxury, which seems to be something that's completely disappeared. It's like if you're doing anything for the public, there has to be a private profit-making element to it.
Yeah.
It's like it can't just be for the good of the city or for the good of the public or
No.
and I think that's something that needs to come back as well, because what are we doing if it's all just hostile environment and make everything smaller and nobody, nobody come in and nobody do this, and where's the joy? What are we celebrating? What's the happy stuff? What are we about? Are we just about everyone be separate and stay in your home and order things online, or are we about doing more?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like when I first started this interview. My scout leader was called Mr. Dent, and his children had been through scouts, and he carried on as a scout leader, even though his children had grown up. The opportunity that he gave me by running that scout unit and then the trips that I went on basically changed my life, because it meant that I liked the outdoors. It gave me an interest in geography. Those things have been, with me all of my life. And that's because someone went out of his way to help others. And that's that sort of social commitment, isn't it? It's that social infrastructure that we need. And if you think about libraries, they're there where you can go and you can access computers, you can access books, you can study. It's a public source which needs to be supported. And there are other examples as well. When you look back in time, things like Sunday schools, clubs, all of these things have helped people, haven't they, get on?
Yeah. Workplace, like membership schemes and communities and clubs and all sorts of things that you don't really see these communal groups. It's like we talk a lot about community and stuff, but it seems to be a lot of the community that we have now is very much from a pot of money, essentially from central government and some local government that funds a thing, that funds a worker or a program or whatever to try and create a community, rather than people coming together and going, right, let's put some cash into a pot and be a thing and do a thing for a thing. I think we're in a period of change that will be a long ongoing change, and where things get different all the time, but we don't necessarily notice. Kind of like with COVID, like COVID changed the world, but it didn't. But it did.
No. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this is the point of the show where I throw it over to you. So if there's anything that we haven't touched upon, or anything that you want to revisit, anything that you want to talk about that we haven't covered, or ask me, whatever you want to say, over to you for anything that you might want to talk about at this point.
Okay. I was just thinking, really, about that social infrastructure thing that we were just talking about, and the city of Leeds and where it's at and what's going on. And it's definitely a time of change. I drove down the M621 last night, and I always drive down the M621 as you come in from junction 27 of the M62, and Leeds is there in front of you. And depending on what day it is and what the weather's like, it can look like other cities around the world. The light shines in a certain way, and I think, well, it looks a bit like Chicago. And then it shines in another way, and I think, oh, it's looking a bit grim. Maybe it might be Moscow. But last night I noticed all these red lights, and it's because there are so many cranes. There's so many buildings being put up that are taller, almost skyscrapers. So the city is definitely changing. And so I guess with my videos, I'll be reflecting that, the geography element and the local history element. So it's a city that's growing and doing really well, a city I'm proud of. But there's one bit that's missing, that if we could do it, it could change the city for such a lot of people and for such a long time. And that is public transport.
I knew you were going to say that.
If we could have some form of decent public transport,
mass transit in this region,
absolutely,
which it needs, yes,
it could absolutely change it. Because where I live in South Leeds, and if you head into the city centre, it's difficult. It's very difficult. Public transport isn't as reliable as it was, but the roadworks and things that are going on, they make it difficult as well. And I think we've got to be careful we don't end up with communities that are sort of cut off, that they can't access the city. So whilst all these changes are very positive, and it's good to see the city doing so well, and all the opportunities that it brings for its residents, I do think if you could just get your public transport, at some sort of tram system working, it would be absolutely fantastic. And for me, what I think is the problem over the last 20 or 30 years is that as new infrastructure, new buildings, changes have taken place, they should have been building in a space for some sort of tram system, so that when it did finally come along, I'm not sure if it ever will, but when it did, there'd be the room for it. Just little bits here and there where it could happen. And I think that's the real shame, really, for the city, and hopefully something that can be done about it in the future.
Yeah. So where can people find you? Where can people find the channels?
Okay, well, when I've put all of this together, everything is at GeogJuice. So that's at GeogJuice. And if you put that into any social media, most of them anyway, something will come back and you'll be able to see where the videos are. Also, I've got a few teaching resources and things like that as well that you can access. Got a Facebook page where I put things on, maps, links. Got Instagram where I put more photographs of things as I'm going along. I've got Twitter where I might post what I've been up to, but I also use that to look at what other people are up to, other geography people, other local history people, see what everyone's doing. And then the YouTube channel, you can see the videos.
Thank you again to Bryan for being my guest. Thanks as always to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you are in Leeds or from Leeds, if you are Leeds, then please come on this show. Yes, I am speaking to you. If you're a loiner who is interested in where you live, where you work, or where you're from, then obviously listen to and support Working Hours, but also check out and support Bryan's excellent Leeds content. You can find GeogJuice at facebook.com/GeogJuice, youtube.com/@GeogJuice, instagram.com/GeogJuice, twitter.com/GeogJuice. If you'd like to see the first ever published video interview for Working Hours, then go and subscribe to the YouTube channel now. It's youtube.com/@workinghourspodcast4618. Hit that notification bell so that you get told when I finally post the video. The link for the channel will be in the description for this episode. Let's see if I can get 10 new subs on YouTube before I post the video. Probably not. Remember, I still need to find 885 loiners to interview, so being a guest is the greatest help. Are you counting along with me now? Will you email me if I mess the numbers up? Probably not. A guest on Working Hours gets free advertising, free media experience, and to be part of a unique historic project in our unique and important city. More importantly than that, you'll get to talk to someone who's interested in what you have to say for an hour or so. How many of us get that in our lives anymore? Whatever you do, I'm interested to hear about it. You don't have to like your job. You don't have to name your company. You don't have to be online. And you can even be anonymous on your episode if you'd like. You will enjoy it. Honestly, most people seem to. You can email Working Hours at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/western-studios. Western Studios Leeds will help you realize your podcast for only £25 for an hour of podcast work. Need podcast production, recording, editing, or any podcast admin doing? Need it all doing? Do you want or need a podcast host or co-host for your podcast project? Then get in touch with Western Studios Leeds Limited. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com to get your podcast made. I am available to third sector organisations, small to medium-sized businesses and individuals who want to make podcasts or create other digital audio content. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to show off your expertise in your field? Want some help creating your show and format, or just some support learning to podcast and getting going? Whatever your podcast needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own podcast project.